Let's be innovative. Let's challenge a norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
Lionheart returns debuting its new championship format. For the first time, Lionheart's best will battle in a multi-class format featuring BMW's all-new M Hybrid V8 and M4 GT3 machines. 55 drivers will face off in the ultimate test in the ultimate driving machine. 18 races at the world's most demanding road courses where traffic takes on a whole new meaning. This year, Lionheart will crown 2 champions, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Buttkicker Sportscar Championship, presented by BMW Performance Driving School, starts now. With 2 rounds in the books, 3 drivers have had the perfect start to the season across the classes with 100% winning records. Today though, at a track that has a stark contrast between wide flowing corners and tight twisty sections, could the first twists in the championship begin to spring root? Welcome to Germany and welcome to the next level racing Grand Prix of the Hockenheimring, presented by HyperX. Hello everyone and welcome back to RaceSpotTV for coverage of the 2023 Buttkicker Sports Car Series. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, alongside once more with Andrew Kinsella in what is going to be a busy week of Lionheart competition. Let's head straight though into our BMW Performance Driving School pre-race show, because after what was a frenetic start to the campaign, we took a couple of weeks off, but now we're going to start heading into the meat of the season, into the middle half of the championship, where things are truly going to start looking just that little bit more exciting. Yes, 3 drivers have been perfect to start off the season, but as we take a look at our next level racing schedule, Andrew, this is where we're going to go to some tracks new and old to some drivers, I'm sure. Many may not have gone to the likes of Fuji and Circuit of the Americas in recent times, but we'll go to staples like the Hockenheimring, like Watkins Glen in a week's time, and the Circuit de la Sarthe at the end of June.
Absolutely. This is the really fun opening segment of this schedule where, as you say, all of these circuits are more or less familiar, but then I'm looking ahead to that Most Sport race on July 24th. I think that's going to be really fascinating to watch. Of course, the IMSA race there in the real world, always entertaining, always action-packed, so that's the one I've got circled for me.
That's the first half of the season, of course, before we head over to the back half, where closing a season at Daytona under the night lights is always special in and of itself. We'll be very excited to see how the rest of that all builds up, though, in towards 2024. Quick look at your driver standings presented by the BMW Performance Driving School. Of course, they're split into the two classes. We've got LMD8 and GT3. It's Austin Young in that Hydra Race geodesic racing machine that's been really impressive, mastering this BMW M Hybrid V8 in a car that's only been around since December of 2022 in the virtual world, made its debut in the real world in January of 2023, Andrew.
Yes, and it's quite the car already on this on the iRacing service. It's developed quite the reputation as a challenging but fun car to drive, and it's shown in the races that we've seen already in this young Lionheart season. As you say, Austin Young in the geodesic racing team, he's done a great job at the top, but the thing that impresses me the most is that Graham Saunders, despite being there or thereabouts in both of the races that we've had so far, he's nowhere to be found in that top 10.
Yes, but we're still very, very early on, and look at Alexander Van der Sant finished the first race decently well after recovering up through the field. He's back in 10th position now. Plenty of swings and roundabouts, I have no doubt about that. Quick look at your split GT3 standings as well, again presented by your BMW Performance Driving School. And here I like that we have the Pro Championship and the AM Championship. You score points based on your combined finishing position. However, crucially, you're fighting only with those inside of your championship, which is always an interesting complexion, Andrew, because for Chase Wilson, who's finished inside of the top 10 in the opening 2 races of the season in the overall GT3 field, he still had to make sure that he's faced off with some stern competition wheel to wheel with the Pro Championship cars to maximize the points that he gets.
Yeah, absolutely, particularly for those drivers in the AM Championship who maybe aren't finishing all the way up the order. Every position counts, so some of the pro drivers tend to get maybe a little bit frustrated with the AM drivers from time to time because they think that they're not really racing with them. But every point, as you say, it matters come the end of the season, because one really strong race from the likes of James Paulson or Chris Reagan, you're not just getting up 2 or 3 points. If you're finishing several positions in front and in front of several or with several pro drivers between you and your rival, you could be getting 10, 15 points easily in a race here. So it's always very important, particularly in the AM Championship, to get every single position.
Sean Campbell has been the dominant force in the GT3 class. Margins of victories, 20, 30 seconds, not to be uncommon, I think, for the rest of the season, although Miguel Vigo may have something to say about that. Ryan Otis, Josh Chin, Carlos Villa, and then Eric Staropoli round out the top 5 in your Pro Championship. Of course, I look at your HyperX team points as well, because in the LMD8 is going to be quite interesting. Austin Young by himself scored in 6th position. In the GT3 Championship, Sean Campbell by himself scored in 2nd spot. And that goes to speak to Andrew, what a crazy start to this multi-class era of Lionheart it's been.
It truly has been a crazy start, and it seems calm at the front, but as soon as you get back into the pack, there's been battles throughout the field, and even at the front of the LMDH category at Spa, there was a lot of lead changes, a lot of battling, so there's certainly going to be a lot of action here, and this track that we're going to today in Hockenheim is really one that as we were talking about before we came on air, this really produces a lot of action throughout the course of a race.
We'll talk about your Gomez Sim Industry Series details in this debut season of the Butt Kicker Sports Car Series, the 10th year of the Lionheart Racing Series. We're racing 2 ultimate driving machines, the BMW Hybrid V8 and the M4 GT3, both introduced first into the virtual world before they went racing in anger in the real world. Custom fixed setups built by the Majors Garage with the cash and prize pool across of your 3 classes totting up to $18,000, and that includes for the LMDH and GT3 champions a BMW M4 GT4 experience over at the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California. 90-minute timed races, slightly uncommon in Lionheart perspective, but live race control has been an interesting addition to the series, and we have no doubt it will continue to be a talking point. Here's a look at your arena track analysis. Although the layout of the Hockenheimring has changed many, many times, we've been racing here now for going on 90 plus years, and there's a stark contrast between the wide back straightaway that funnels into what's going to be the major choke point on the track, Andrew, at the hairpin, and then the closed confines of that final sector, which is plenty of Formula One drivers in the last 5-10 years have shown, Sebastian Vettel included, it can be very, very tricky.
Yes, today it's going to take a mixture of aggression and patience. You have to really time your passes, particularly if you're in one of the prototype cars trying to lap the GT3 field. You have to exercise patience in that final sector because it's so easy to lose it on one of those cambered corners in the stadium section. But then again, you have that long straightaway. So if you can time your runs and time where you're catching the GT3 traffic appropriately, you can really gain a lot of time over one lap if you're a GTP here.
Track limit's always a talking point, especially I think at places like Turn 1, fast corners with the speed difference between the LMDHs and the GT3s. You may see the way that they interact. It's going to be quite interesting. Fuel window, 24 laps, 26 laps for LMDH, 20 to 21 laps for the GT3s, but as we've seen so far this season, it typically means that we'll see them on pit lane at about the same time, and a stop and go was going to cost you about the equivalent of 20 seconds. We'll see how that plays out when it comes to actually putting fuel and potentially tires in the case of the LMDHs onto their machines. Here's a look at up above. From this interesting facility, you get a sense of where the track used to go with some of the forest around. The hairpin is, of course, the major talking point. I've brought up turn number 1 as well. The Mercedes-Benz Arena, which of course filters out of the hairpin, Andrew, is another one of those underrated, I'll say, talking points.
Yes, it is, and particularly that right-hand kink coming into the Mercedes-Benz complex there. It's a tricky situation, and we've seen not only in sim time and time again, but in the real world as well, that can really create some miscommunications between faster and slower cars, so it's definitely going to be a place to watch here today.
I do apologize, but we're going to have to call it by its name, the Mercedes-Benz Arena. As much as we love the ultimate driving machines, it's always fun in BMW Sim M Cup competition when I've got to do that as well. Qualifying well and truly underway, and well, look at those times at the top. Maybe no surprise to see Sean Campbell at the very top of the GT3. Valiokas always quick in these LMDH cars as well in that race clutch entry. Currently sits less than a tenth of a second clear of Austin Young. Don't think we're going to see any improvement out of either of them. Phil Kraus, though, has just ticked on to his final lap. Now 10 minutes go on to the clock. Drivers get 4 lap times to go and work their way around. And in the case of this LMDH car, Andrew, you got to remember, we're not just talking about fuel and tire management with this fixed setup. We're also talking about battery consumption.
Yes, we are. You do have to be a little bit careful with the deploying of the batteries over the course of a lap here. It's one of those tracks where you really want the battery to deploy down that very long straightaway, use up all the speed that you can, but then where are you really charging up the battery back again? It's all in this stadium section, so you have to be very careful, very judicious with your inputs and with whatever setting you have to be running with this fixed setup.
This is that stadium section as well. Sebastian Vettel went off just through that corner, off on the right-hand side. And then a couple of years later, we had all the scrambling on the outside of the penultimate corner where there's a drag strip, very low grip, and in the rain, even less grip. Phil Kraus, though, out of that final corner, currently 4th and almost 3 tenths off the mark. Can he find those 3 tenths? He'll find 2 or so tenths, and it'll be enough to jump him up to 3rd position, inside now of row number 2. But it is still the Hydrarace Geodesic Racing team. Made sure I got that one right. Looking strong in qualifying. Young, Saunders, Beta for 2nd, 4th, and 5th.
Yeah, but we've been looking for a driver to potentially come up and really start to challenge the Geodesic Racing team stranglehold that they've had on the first 2 races. And I think that might just be the 23 car, Marius Valiokas. Certainly over 1 lap, he's proving very fast around this track.
Look at Sean Campbell, just so calm, cool, collected in this BMW M4 GT3, and even though he's already got the pole, this time only by a tenth of a second on his final flying attempt, he's within 0.02 of a second. That's a crazy level of consistency.
It really is, and you saw him using absolutely every inch of the track there. Even though he was calm and cool and collected, as you say, he used up all of that excess area off the side of the track just to the edge of the gravel, and you can use all of it on that final corner here. It's one of the few forgiving areas in terms of the track limits that you were mentioning earlier, and that's part of being fast, is knowing exactly where you can push it and how far you can push those track limits.
So you'll see pit entries off to the right, by the way. Carlos Villa not actually going to improve on his lap time. He's on his 5th lap in the session, and so that means it's not going to actually count. But pit entry here is always a talking point as well, because you compromise the penultimate corner to really set it up. And you've got to make sure you communicate that well to ensure that you don't cause anyone to trip over one another. I have never seen that. Never seen that before, Andrew.
No, never.
It's never
been an issue, no.
This is one track, though, is now, I think, basically qualifying done and dusted. Jim Herrick, Brian Beard, Aaron Morgan, and Mike Rasmussen not setting qualifying times, it would seem, but 36 times across the two classes on the board. This is a track where I feel like the LMDHs are going to be maybe the most aggressive that they've been this season, because you've got those slower speed corners where they may want to try and deploy a bunch of that hybrid coming out of them, but they can only do that if they've not got a GT3 directly in front.
Yes, exactly. It's one of those tracks where you need to have aggression at certain points, but patience in a lot of other points as well. So it's really all about that balance.
I've already talked about one other German car manufacturer. Let's try not to talk, I guess, about the third German car manufacturer, especially given that they have an experience center on this track that you can test here on iRacing. Out of all the tracks in Germany, actually, they've taken the BMW branding off of the Nürburgring as well. I'm not sure there's really one where you could just go and see BMW logos everywhere.
Certainly not one on the iRacing service. I'm trying to think. No, I can't think of one.
So we just need to get some more German racetracks on to the service.
I think that's the message for iRacing, is you just haven't scanned enough German racing tracks yet.
I'm trying to think what would be the closest racetrack to Munich. I'm struggling right now.
Unfortunately, my North American centrism is winning out here, and I do not know very much about German
You're Canadian,
geography.
though. You're meant to be more cultured.
I am. I know both American and Canadian geography.
Okay, I see. Okay, you've expanded up one country there.
Yes, it's one more than the States do.
So, one thing that's interesting as well is qualifying into its closing stages. Last round, we had a pretty fixed fuel window. Such a long lap, we didn't expect much fuel saving. Here we've got a 3-lap window indicated by the drivers. That means that we could see a little bit of gamesmanship, especially knowing what we keep talking about with the traffic.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the possibility for a little bit of gamesmanship, a little bit of strategy going on here. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting, because I'm not sure exactly what the fast way is going to be here. I think it's all going to come down, especially for the LMDHs, is where they're coming up on traffic. And if you can avoid having to go through a pack of GT3 cars, it'll be worth it.
That's something that was talked about heading into Spa. I'm curious to see if it is going to be the case here again. However, qualifying in the books. No surprise maybe in GT3 who's on pole position, but at least when it comes to your LMDHs, it looks like we're going to be in for another close fight over the course of today. Let's head over though to the starting grid. We're ready to rumble for the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of the Hockenheimring, presented by HyperX. Here's a look at the starting grid presented by Butt Kicker. It's Marius Valiokis in the Race Clutch 23 with a 125.828 that will lead us to the green. Austin Young alongside the championship leader, looking to make it 3 for 3. Phil Kraus was lined up inside of Graham Saunders, who just wants to get some points on the board. John Badefer, Matt Taylor make up the rest of your top 6 in LMDH. Back in 7th, it's Alexander Van der Sant with the Power Slide duo. Adam Blocker alongside Michael O'Brien and David Sirra, completing your top 10, 1 second, 1st through 10th. Caleb Benzie has Chris Fowler for company, 11th and 12th positions, while hopefully not unlucky 13th for Alex Guyon. He's got Tyler Graf in 14th on his right-hand side. The final cars with times on the board. Rasmussen, Morgan and Beard will line up at the back of the field. 17, BMW M Hybrid V8, ready to rumble here in Germany. Then we switch our way over to the GT3s, where Sean Campbell wants to make it 3 and 3, and he's going to be hard-pressed to be beat. However, Joshua Chin within 1/10 of a second bodes well here to get things underway. Ryan Otis, Miguel Vigo line up row 2. Matthew Morhart and then Chase Wilson share row 3, with the AM driver really kicking his season off in fine form. That's going to be important for him, especially seeing the gap back to James Paulson, the next AM driver. Between them, Marquez, Villa, Hill, Staropoli, Bennett. That's the rest of your front 6 rows in the GT3 class. Before we get into the meat of the AMs, Chris Staples in 13th. He's got fellow AM and debutant Mark Cohn alongside Clint Martin, and then Travis Jurgel Lehner in 15th and 16th spots. Row 9 is Chris Reagan and Trevor Malone. Well, completing your top 20, it's going to be Creighton Carter and then Gabe Wood. Logan Spath, Craig Forsyth, Jim Herrick, the 23 GT3 cars that will get ready to go. And with a short pace lap, there's not much time for the drivers to get any sort of tire temperature and pressures worked in. Not much time either for us to work our way through today's featured onboard cameras. We'll start with Christopher Hill, who will ride with the BMW Performance Driving School. Drive on the edge of physics and experience the ultimate rush. Visit bmwperformancedrivingcenter.com. Carlos Villa carries with him Butt Kicker. Sim racing is better with Butt Kicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com. Up with the LMDHs, Mike Razmas carries HyperX with him. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. And that's a look at the featured onboards, but the beauty of sim racing, onboard cameras with the entirety of the field. 90 minutes on the clock. 3 drivers looking to make it 3 for 3, but here in Germany, can anyone catch the championship leaders? Of course, we're about to find out. Marius Valiokas, with a new starting procedure, sees the green flag and gets us going here at the Hockenheimring. Great jump from pole position, and now Hydra Race Geodesic Racing hoping to slot in 2nd and 3rd. Phil Kraus not going to make it so easy though, as your LMDHs work their way over towards turn 2 and the crucial braking zone that will filter them towards that hairpin. New starting procedure for the GT3s. They have just gotten underway, and Sean Campbell, of course, will convert that pole position to the lead as they work their way into the braking zone. But crucially, all 39 cars pointed in the right direction. Phil Kraus still trying to hold off Graham Saunders into the hairpin as the LMDHs for the first time on the brakes in earnest.
Look at Phil Kraus take that really deep line. We got a little bit of tense moments there back further in the pack around that hairpin, but it looks like everyone did just about manage to make it through. Now we have the GT3s coming down. They're a little bit more strung out than the LMDHs were.
Probably for the best, all things considered, and it's going to work out nicely for those GT3s. It's so easy knowing how tight the corner is to try and pinch someone too wide, but somehow they are all going to survive and filter in towards that Mercedes-Benz arena, with still Sean Campbell continuing to just stretch his legs, doing exactly what he would want. It's always the first pass through traffic that is the most chaotic. This new start procedure has only hastened the arrival of the traffic, delaying the GT3s in starting their race, but Valiokas at the front leads us to the end of lap number 1 with Young, Kraus, Saunders and Beta for the rest of the top 5.
Yes, but that battle between Kraus and Saunders, it's really cost them some time. They're a full almost second and a quarter behind the battle for the lead of Valiokas and Young. Young and they're just sort of gallivanting off into the distance. Meanwhile, Betafor has nicely slotted in behind him, and then Taylor, Blocker, and Van de Sande have all held positions on that start.
See if Phil Kraus is able to close up. Slightly further back in line, it's Caleb Bensi that's going to slide up the inside of Michael O'Brien. And you'll just see on the outside, maybe getting the better drive off the corner, especially seeing that Caleb Bensi on the inside curve actually bobbles. Very much disrupted the traction of his car. He'll slot back into line and jink to the inside, but through turn 7, I think technically it is. It's not really a passing opportunity. Say hello again to the GT3s as they rumble their way up in towards that hairpin once again. You can see that Sean Campbell being kept relatively honest by Joshua Chin. You've got to wonder though how close Josh Chin will be after that first cycle through of traffic, because already it's half a lap that separates the LMDHs from the GT3s.
They're quickly cruising back up onto the back of this GT3 field. I would say that they're probably going to arrive in no less than 3 or 4 laps at the rate that they're going, just simply due to that start procedure. But Now, you mentioned Chin, and I think he's doing a good job so far of staying with Sean Campbell, but the trick with Sean Campbell is not only is he fast over one lap in qualifying, he's so consistent lap after lap in the race that any small mistake and suddenly you find yourself out of draft range, and that's almost what's going to happen with Chin very quickly here.
At the very least, though, look who's having a solid race right now. That is Miguel Vigo, who's had no luck to start this season off, and he's hoping to swing things back in his direction. But look who's not far behind him. Chase Wilson, who's worked his way up one position, past Matthew Morhart into the top 5 in combined class. And again, AMs and pros score points in the overall combined GT3 classification, but are only judged in the championship against their own class. For Chase Wilson, a 5th place finish here. Given that he's been in the top 10 so far, when do we start the campaign to promote Chase Wilson up towards the pros?
Absolutely. Wilson's doing an outstanding job here today. He got some of his competitors in that AM category, like James Paulson, Chris Reagan, they're down in 12th, 15th position, but Wilson is showing those amateurs how they're doing, how to do it here, because he's doing a great job at holding off Morhart as well.
And with it still about a second up towards Miguel Vigo, it's not the biggest gap in the world, and so that little bit of draft that we still get in these GT3 machines will enable the 13 to just stay as close as he's able to. In towards the arena section, GT3 cars will work once again. Now, they do have anti-lock brakes, they do have traction control if you are new to sports car endurance racing. Slightly different in these LMDHs. Now, they do have a form of traction control, which is kind of just cutting out power to the rear if there's a little bit too much going on, but you don't actually want to get into it, Andrew. That's the always interesting thing when it comes to the driver aids. You don't always want to be relying on them.
Yeah, particularly with this car, because as you say, it does cut out the power momentarily, so it actually is a very big disadvantage if you get into it, particularly coming out of these low-speed corners. So you have to be very, very precise with your throttle inputs in these cars. We see a geodesic racing driver, I think that was Sanders, getting a little bit wide coming into the stadium section.
You know how much they're pushing, though, through that tighter section when you can see how close that they get towards the gravel. And all it takes is just 1 pixel too wide to be in a world of hurt, especially at a relatively old school track like this. I say relatively old school. They definitely made the track a lot safer by reducing the amount of high-speed runs that you had. There's some grass, but it definitely feels a lot more sterile. I think that's the right word.
You're being far too diplomatic with this.
Okay, good.
Arjuna.
We're on the same page.
I believe the PC term for it would be neutered the track compared to the speeds that it used to be on, with the track going off into the forest, off to Grandma's house, and all of those chicanes back in the woods there that used to characterize the old Hockenheimring that we all loved to watch in the mid-2000s, or at least I should say I loved to watch because I was actually alive back then. And alive to see actual Formula One races here. And the other part that, I mean, this doesn't apply to sim racing as much as it does to the real world, but the other thing was that this was one of the last true real tests of the machine as well as the man, and when they took away all of those long straightaways, it took away a lot of the mechanical strain that it put these cars under as well. So that was another dimension that sort of got lost when they converted to this newer layout. As we see, the GTPs are coming up on the back of the GT3 field right now, Arjuna.
And turn 1, knowing how high speed it is, Valiokas will take the 1X for the incident point. Hopefully not a slowdown. Oh! And that's GT3 cars that tangle. They send the LMDA just scattering for the hills. Creighton Carter, Logan Spath coming together. Somehow, we're going to get through that without too much more drama.
Oh my, I don't know how that was only a 2-car incident, Arjuna. That was right in front of the leaders. It was right in front of several other GT3 cars, and somehow we made it all the way through that. To me, it looked like that there was just a little bit of miscommunication. It looked like one of the GT3 cars, I think it might have been Creighton Carter, was sort of looking in his mirrors trying to see where the GTP cars were coming around him, and he just drifted over into the other driver, and the that sent him straight into the Armco on the left side of the track there.
Graham Saunders, John Bader for getting checked up here, as that's Clinton Martin that runs himself very, very wide. Again, first pass through, always the most treacherous because they are the most chock-a-blocked up. They haven't had the opportunity to be separated out. That's what this first cycle will always tend to do across of both of your classes. Important to note though, Josh Chin already 1.7 seconds off of the back of Sean Campbell. It's not going to take the traffic to separate those drivers. Look how aggressive Valiokas was though, through the final corner, opens the gap up at the end of lap number 6 to 1 full second.
Yeah, Valiokas was really aggressive through that field of GT3 cars, and he's used it to his complete advantage, and he's still not done. He's going and trying to put some cars in between himself and Young now, not just time.
And this is where the GT3 cars are well within their right to fight. 3 wide they'll go as they wrap out on towards this back straightaway. Lights flashing from Young just to remind the drivers in front that he's coming, and he's coming with a head full of steam. Let's quickly go and check out what happened then on that back straightaway. Indeed, I think it was just miscommunication, and car parts go flying, cars go flying as well, trying to avoid. And it's fortunate that no LMDH has got tangled up in that one as well.
Yeah, I still don't know how everyone was able to avoid it. And I think it was just Carter was just a little bit spooked by the GTPs coming in and starting to lap the GT3s, and I think he just misjudged where he was on the track there.
So as we head to the start-finish line once again, still haven't gotten through all of the traffic. This has been a good 2 odd laps that it's taken for us to be able to scramble our way on through. Campbell now will be the last car to be lapped as Austin Young's made a mistake. He's made a mistake down in through the arena section where Sebastian Vettel almost 6 years ago made his mistake. Our championship leader unstuck but back on track.
But he's all the way down right now in front of Matt Taylor, so he's down in 5th position and fighting to hold on to the top 5 here. So that was a massive mistake. That's going to cost him several positions. Oh, and we've got a spin in the last turn here.
David Sirab, and he sent the rear end of that car to need some new body work as well. Alex Guyon, his Synergy Lavoie Motorsport teammate. See if he got tangled up in that one as well. But now
I think there might have been a GT3 car involved as well, Arjuna.
I think for Austin Young, it's got to have been a GT3 car, because I can't imagine he would have made a mistake. Oh, yep, he just misjudges it almost by himself, and then all things considered, take a bow, Austin Young, for keeping that out of the wall.
But is it just me, or was he trying to avoid his teammate there, Arjuna?
That was, but I will not put the blame on, I can't tell if that was Carlos Villa or Miguel Vigo, because they do tell GT3 cars to run your racing line, which is exactly what he was trying to do.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he did anything wrong there. I was just like surprised that there was that miscommunication between the 2 drivers on the same team there, because you would think that they might be in the same Discord, but maybe not.
Oh, and that's what happened to David Zira. He tangles with one of your GT3 machines. Can't pick out who it is exactly, but it wasn't all by himself. Big opportunity now for Valiokas, though, out of that traffic cycle, and with a 3.7 second advantage over Phil Kraus. Now, unfortunately, I wouldn't know, because my internet decided to cut out, Andrew, heading into the final laps of last week. Lionheart Retro Series race over at Watkins Glen. But I heard Marius Valiokas had a fantastic fight to grab his first Lionheart Retro Series win.
He did. It was an epic battle in the closing laps, and unfortunately the power outage did not make the final couple of laps to air there, but Valiokas did a great job, and it's amazing what success does for a driver's psyche. And you can tell that Valiokas, where he maybe was a little bit excitable in the last couple of races, he made a couple of unforced errors. This race, he's just been really solid so far, Arjuna.
Check in with Adam Blocker as we have a battle for 6th position. Blocker qualified down in 8th, which I don't necessarily think is where he would have wanted to qualify. I also don't think those technical issues are what he necessarily would have wanted to see. But however, he is our BMW Performance Driving School driver profile today. Now, the problem with Blocker is you never know, should we talk about his Retro Series stats? Should we talk about his Open Wheel Series stats? So I said, let's stick with Open Wheel, Andrew. 115 starts, 88 top 10s. Of those, 83 top 5s, 37 wins, 27 poles, and this coming after he joined the series almost midway through its history. It was a miraculous run that he had back in 2021, where he finished inside of the top 5 in every single race that he competed in. The only problem was that last year, Phil Krause decided he'd go one better and finished on the podium every single time that he raced.
Yeah, and I still blame you for that, Arjuna, because
Why?
you dubbed Adam Blocker the Lionheart King, so naturally Phil Krause had to come in and dethrone him immediately.
I mean, if we're being fair, yes, Phil won the championship last year, but he hasn't got 3 in a... Is it 3 or 4 in a row? I've already forgotten.
Three in a row?
It's 3 in a row.
So, 3 in a row, yeah.
So the fact that we're questioning is it 3 or 4 tells you what I'm trying to say. Phil's still got a few more championships to go before he truly dethrones Adam. That's
true,
my power
but,
slide defense before I get excommunicated from the Discord.
Exactly. A little bit of a KYA there.
Yes, oh, exactly. No. Make sure I'm not going to get in trouble. Blocker's really having to wheel his car, though, and fixed setups. I wonder what that will be like for someone like Blocker, like being up there in the top splits of the iRacing special events, finishing in the top 5 with the Daytona 24 Hours here on iRacing earlier this year. He's got a sense for what he wants the car to feel like, what he thinks the car should feel like. That doesn't always mean, Andrew, as someone who built the setups for Lionheart in the years previously, doesn't always mean that Adam gets what he wants, despite what some people would think.
No, in fact, most of the time, I'll tell you, he does not get what he wants, judging by how much time he spent last year telling me how much he didn't like what I was doing with the setups. But no, for Adam, I think the big hurdle for him to overcome this year is not necessarily the setups, but the fact that he is a very well occupied in the real world in terms of his job, particularly at this time of year, Arjuna. So I don't think that he's really been able to get in the type of practice laps that he has in prior years, but that'll happen when you're the engineer for Joseph Newgard in the real world. So I don't think that he minds necessarily spending more time doing that than on iRacing these days, but he definitely still puts up a fight in no matter what type of machine he's in. Meanwhile, Valiokis, he's given up a whole lot of time. Has he made a mistake sometime on this previous lap or so while we were talking about Adam there?
That's got to be a
Phil
slowdown.
Krause is 3 seconds up the road now.
That's got to be a slowdown to have lost that much time so quickly. I'm not even sure where he really would have got the slowdown from. We'll see if we can grab a look. But Valiokis, after having an almost 4-second advantage heading out of that first cycle of pit stop, it's a lot more difficult now.
It wasn't.
It's the sleeping policeman on the outside of that penultimate corner that just catches the rear end, and in what is a very stiffly sprung car to get the most aerodynamic performance, I'm sure. Oh, that could have been a lot worse. That's 2 great saves today.
Yeah, really nice car control there from Valiokis, but you can just see what happens when you lose it there. You really have to do a very patient job of getting it all caught up. And then the other problem, Arjuna, is of course that he's put a lot of temperature in those rear tires, and it'll take a few laps before they really settle down. So he's going to have to baby this car for probably the next 3 or 4 laps here.
Love that we can take a look at not just your battle up front for your race lead, but where there are some various interesting groupings around the track. Sean Campbell leads by 3.7 seconds from Josh Chin. Traffic helped him, but let's be real, he didn't need that much traffic assistance. Chase Wilson still doing a sterling job up there in the 5th position in the amateur class, although again, remember, they score points combined in the GT3 overall classification, and so that means when you look a little bit further at where the rest of his class is sitting right now, none of them are inside of the top 10. He's going to start building up that advantage in terms of the points early in the season.
Oh, look at Krause.
Traffic again plays its part, and in through turn 1, Krause wasn't going to take no for an answer, follows through, and importantly, Andrew, didn't push too far off of the track there.
Yeah, and you definitely do have to monitor when you take those incident points, because there can be some real consequences as the season starts to wear on, especially when it comes to your incident average, you don't want to be put in a place where you might get a little bit of a stiffer penalty just due to incident points. So it's definitely something to keep monitoring and these drivers to be aware of as you see Kraus and Valiokas starting to go through this GT field here. Wait, Kraus has gotten by Valiokas.
There was a swap around as we were taking a look at Alex Goon. I wonder if Valiokas is just playing the strategy here and maybe thinking about saving some fuel, because he has been running at the front for a decent amount of this race. Keep a look at them entering into the stadium section, but it's all just traffic management for the time being. Let's take a look here. This is where the pass actually happened, Andrew. Valiokas gets on through into the hairpin, looks all right, and then just doesn't go anywhere.
It's almost like he was in the wrong gear, like he went to select second gear and accidentally clicked into third and maybe double pumped the... Yeah, really strange there.
The hybrid didn't kick in is what happens, and so because of the way that the car is implemented here on iRacing, it caused the car to bog down. Now, in through turn 2, they go side by side again, and now with no traffic to deal with, it's all fair game. Clean air to look in front. Kraus holds on for the time being. All of this has allowed Sanders and Baderfer to be closing up as well, and you've got the third of the Hydro Race geodesic racing machines, Austin Young, lurking in the background as well.
Oh, this is all starting to accordion back together here. This is where it starts to get really dicey for these two leaders, because they've been fighting so much with each other that it might be to their detriment overall in this race. Meanwhile, a little bit further back in your field, Adam Blocker has finally gotten around Matt Taylor, so let's see what Adam Blocker can do with maybe a little bit of clean track now.
We've got 4 seconds up the road to try and catch Austin Young, and then he's brought into this leading equation, so not too far away from being part of it. Let's check into the hairpin, which always is a worrying proposition. Got Clint Martin. You have Craig Forsyth there as well, just the classic checkup. The Scowers car goes around. Blocker and Taylor fortunately split the middle. And, well, unfortunately for, I think, Clint Martin, took him a while, fortunately, to back up using his relative box. No danger there.
Yeah, but it cost him probably about 20 seconds before he finally got it righted again, so that's going to be big dent in his hopes so far today. But look at this battle that's going on behind Phil Kraus, because Graham Sanders isn't just closing, he is there now, Arjuna.
And John Baderfer, I'd argue, one more lap at this trend, and he's there too. And is this the impetus for Valiokas to charge to the inside? Kraus trying to cover him off, but can only pinch so much. Still tries to squeeze the race clutch car into the braking zone as they come up on about 5 different GT3 machines to work it through. They're going to have to check this one up. Kraus is bottled up, eventually is granted a little bit of space, but already Graham Sanders had slipped on through and dropped second place away. Valiokas now with a car between him and those behind will try and build a buffer again.
That was some really tight action there. Valiokas used the GT3 traffic as a pick for Kraus, and it lost Kraus another position there. Look at how aggressive Valiokas is coming through these GT3 cars. Some really tough driving here. He is definitely on it. One thing to mention is while we were watching that happen, Mark Cohn did have a spin in turn 1, and that's put him back a fair ways as well.
Watching this, you can see that Locker is not really yet on the back of them, but you do have Austin Young within half a second of Baderfer. We've talked previously today, or this season, about how there is a bit of a difference in traffic expectations. We talked about Blocker being in top split special events, but Valiokas, Sanders, Kraus, Baderfer, Young, these are all drivers that have been regularly competing on RaceSpotTV in high-level endurance events. Same with the likes of Campbell, Chin, and Vigo. There's also some more drivers who have come in as our Lionheart stalwarts, who are not necessarily as accustomed to the endurance racing aspect of things. Phil Kraus locks up the brakes into the hairpin, and Graham Sanders once again cannot buy any luck. Phil Kraus is going to redress the position, the damage already done.
I was going to say that's some pretty good. Oh, and we have even more action here in the hairpin. That's a big pileup.
That's O'Brien in the number 45 that's trying to get himself looped around in time, but that's
there were 2 or 3 GT3 cars involved in that one as well, Arjuna. But I was going to say quickly about Phil Krause. I was really sporting of him, but I'm not sure whether that will actually spare him the wrath of the stewards or not. As we've got...
it's continuing to just kick off. It's
continuing, yeah.
Because there's Christopher Hill that's gone off the track.
And I think Chris Fowler was involved in that one.
And now potentially we may have some technical issues, so we'll get back with you in just a few moments' time. We'll keep it radio style for the time being, but my days, they all decided they wanted a piece of the action.
Yeah, so the first bit there was with Phil Krause and Graham Saunders there, and that was flat out just Phil Krause locked the rear brakes and lost the rear. He was able to mostly save it, but unfortunately, as he was saving it, he got into Sanders, and that cost Sanders a few positions there. Betaford Young up in front of him, as we finally get our pictures back here, you can see the geodesic racing drivers are still 2, 3, 4 now, but they have switched positions from where they were, and Krause is all the way back into the clutches of Adam Blocker.
Eric Staropoli, who's had a pretty impressive start to the season, will head down to pit lane, as will Michael O'Brien, as a result of everything that we've seen. Surprisingly, despite all of the chaos and the drama, still have only had 4 drivers in total on pit road, Creighton Carter and Logan Spath, who were involved in the early incident. 2 of them, Staropoli, Michael O'Brien, the most recent 2. There is Sean Campbell, by the way. Quiet races. I'm not sure what Sean Campbell's really going to have to complain about if we continue at this trend for the next, 15 races after this, because he'll be just waiting for them to give him his gear and the keys to his BMW M4 driving experience.
Which is a great prize for the winners of the 2 classes here in this series, but at the same time, don't look now, but Josh Chin isn't necessarily letting him get away as much as you might think. Chin is only about 5 or so seconds back. He's really stabilized the gap over these last few laps, and maybe this last time through the GTP field. He's done a really good job of just holding his position, and he's not getting too excited. So if Campbell makes a mistake, Josh Chin is definitely well positioned to pounce here.
I'll track that lap time, but Sean Campbell, I think, is running a comfortable pace for the time being, which is a worrying sign for the rest of the field. Matt Taylor, by the way, has also just come down on towards the pit lane, so it's a couple more drivers getting collected in the recent moments. We're on to lap 18 for your LMDHs, lap 16 for the GT3s, which means we're only about 4 laps away, respectively, I guess, from entering into a pit stop window. Mentioned it once, Andrew. Pit road entry here can be a little bit confusing. I think a lot of drivers will be hoping they're not dealing with traffic.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of those pit entries where you have to sort of cut this corner here and really dive to the inside aggressively. So if you're doing something unpredictable and the car's right behind you like these 2 teammates are, it can definitely lead to some miscommunications, although I'm sure that the 2 teammates will be communicating, so you won't have that type of miscommunication with them. But it's not just teammates out there. Obviously, it's GT3s, it's GTPs, and particularly if the GT3s come in a little bit before the GTPs do, you might get a little bit of miscommunication happening. Oh, Brian Beard is off track right now.
Final sector. Now Sebastian Job has also billed the Hockenheimring for rallycross and lawnmower services in that section before. I get the sense that I think I probably know that was. Let's slowly, though, if we can now, with everything seemingly stabilized behind the scenes on the broadcast, go through some replays, because hopefully we still have the capability to do that. Andrew mentioned Mark Cohn's moment slightly earlier, and it came actually with some assistance from Michael O'Brien through turn number 1, and it's almost like we put that on the arena track analysis for a reason, the disparity in speed through turn 1. Into the hairpin, though. We've talked about the difficulty on the brakes in the rear end of these cars. Phil Krause getting caught out. Yeah,
flat out just locked it up, and that's all it takes. And then In the aftermath of that, we have Michael O'Brien again. He's coming up, and then once again locks the brakes just a little bit. Oh no, it's all happened in front of him, hasn't it, Arjuna? It was 2 GT3 cars, and then Michael O'Brien was just an innocent bystander. He arrived on scene, and there was just nowhere to go. The track was fully blocked.
Not exactly sure who all got picked up in that. Chris Fowler, I think, did. Christopher Hill as well. But given how much smoke that we had seen, overall, that doesn't look as bad as I initially feared. Now, we do have early calls onto pit lane, and I did wonder what was going to happen given how we are faring in traffic. And John Baderfer has elected, you know what? At the end of lap number 19, I'm going to head down towards the pit road, and I'm going to cycle my way back onto track. First call, earliest call rather, he could come in, and it's worked out pretty well in terms of clean air.
Yeah, I like this call from John Baderfer. He's basically dividing up this race into thirds here. Obviously, this is the 90-minute race, and we've gone through about a half hour at this point. So 2 more half-hour stints for Baderfer, and he should be home and dry, nice and easy. Not much math involved in that one, but yeah, I like the call. I think it's just going to give him a nice balanced race here. Oh, as Phil Kraus is off the track in the stadium section.
He's off the track again, but this time able to hold on to his private label Team Hype machine. And lost out to...
I was going to say, Arjuna, I think you have to start wondering here. We've seen a number of drivers come off track. Brian Beard had another off-track excursion as well. I wonder if these GTP tires are starting to give out here a little bit.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I had literally just wanted to talk about track conditions, because I was wondering the same thing. It's not terribly bad, though. 48 degrees Celsius is not the warmest that I've seen a BMW M Hybrid V8 have to deal with, and especially coming off a weekend where we've been talking in the real world about how a lack of tire warmers and cold climates have meant dangerous conditions. It's not the case here, at least at the Hockenheimring.
No, but one thing about the Hockenheimring is there's a lot of zones where you're using the rear tires a fair bit. There's a lot of high commitment corners, and then a lot of power down zones coming out of these corners. So these rear tires are really going to get tired on this car. So even at 48 degrees, it's going to wear up the rear tires, trying to harness all of that hybrid power all of the time here. And I think what you're seeing is basically once you hit about 30% on the tire wear remaining, it really starts to go off a cliff in terms of grip, and I think that's what's catching out a number of these drivers, including Kraus and O'Brien and Beard.
Chase Wilson, Carlos Villa head on in from GT3s, but they're still not on to lap 20. Remember, Carlos Villa, someone that we did see struggling a little bit with tires in the previous race. Not sure if that's the case here. Austin Young, end of lap 21, rolls his way on in. Valiokas, Sanders, and Block are going as long as possible, which does tend to be the traditionally favored strategy. Go long early, put in less fuel total in the car, see how it fares out, and all combines in terms of the different calls come the end of the 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think going long here will overall be a better strategy, but at the same time, it's making sure that you're keeping up your lap times and really allowing yourself enough of a buffer to make sure that you're getting out where you were competitively, because we see Young here. Look at how far in front Baderfer is compared to where they came in. He's a good 3 seconds behind Baderfer now. Fortunately,
we do have tire warmers for these cars, at least I believe we do. Otherwise, we'd be struggling a lot more on these outlaps. You know the reasoning why there's no tire warmers in the WEC anymore, Andrew, right?
I have not heard this story, no.
It's for climate concerns, which is it's a good reason to not use tire warmers, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Got no problems with that. It would be good if you had tires that were designed to be used without tire warmers, though. And you've got to wonder, at what point does the cost of damaged race cars exceed the cost of just using the tire warmers at the end of the day?
I'm excited for when Formula One ditches the tire warmers.
Oh boy,
Arjuna.
I forgot they were doing that. That wasn't a nightmare, was it? That was real.
No, that is a very real thing, and Pirelli struggles enough as it is just to make a tire that operates normally, so I can't imagine that they can make a tire that will actually operate in cold conditions.
Poor Pirelli, as Tyler Graf has Chris Fowler working on pass. These drivers are about to go one lap down because your race leader is hot on their heels. Pirelli do have a rather thankless job, I will say that. In that they often have to design the tires to do what Formula One wants them to do. And as much as we complain about the hard compound tires that produce the one-stop races that are so boring, do we really want those races where we had 4 stops because tires were going boom all the time?
So here's the thing, Arjuna, is that the whole reason that we have this is my tire rant for the day, so buckle up. The whole reason that Formula One has told Pirelli to do this is because we had that race in Canada one time where the tires just didn't work and they went off really quickly and nobody knew what was happening. The problem, of course, is now that everyone has, now that it happens all the time, everyone's maximized what happens when those tires fall off. So all of the chaos that happens just doesn't happen anymore because everyone's optimized the strategy anyways. So why are we having tires that degrade so poorly when all that we need is a tire that will like operate within a good window most of the time because it's not actually going to impact the strategy anyways?
Fair enough. Phil Krause, by the way, I think may be done for the day. Because he's been in pit road for about 3 minutes and counting. If you're curious about how hard a bonk he had into the wall, I will turn your attention to our replay machine, Andrew. Bonk.
Yeah, that's a big one there, Arjuna.
So I'm not surprised that he may be done, but we'll take a look on board. You can just see how quick Gabe Wood, by the way, off of his own accord. It's not even on the gravel, it's just the way the car digs in on the curb. Really not much Krause could have done.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a crown there, and if you just hit the curb slightly wrong, it just throws you, and you're just a passenger at that point. So, unfortunate for Krause, but he's definitely going to be in the pit lane for the foreseeable future here.
And maybe we'll have race control decisions to deal with heading into the next round at Watkins Glen, which is just a week away. Rapid fire races. Let's see if Valiokas end of lap 24 will jink off to the right. No. Have yet to had Valiokas, Blocker, Razmas, Taylor, or David Sirra head on into the lane just yet. And meanwhile, as the GT3 cars head on to lap 21, most of them have headed on in, and as Sean Campbell leads the field in, Miguel Vigo will follow. Seems like the magic number for the GT3s is 21, because remember, we had a short pace lap, so these drivers could really maximize their fuel through the course of the race.
Yes, absolutely. The GT3s are... Sorry, I've lost my train of thought entirely there. I started that sentence and it just went right away.
That's a great camera shot of the pit lane.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Sean Campbell's already off and away, so at least we can take a look at his WMP racing machine. Where is Josh Chin going to be? Because
right there.
I did notice a short fill for Josh Chin, I think trying to gain some track position. He'll be door to door in the private label Team Hype machine. But crucially now, 5 seconds shorter in the pit stop. Can Josh Chin make that up by trying to save some fuel? We know how good the King of Chins can be with being light with his right foot.
Absolutely, and with that sort of wide open pit window that you mentioned, Arjuna, he really had the ability to do that, and I don't know that he's actually going to have to save that much fuel. I think really the only place that he's going to have to pay the piper is when it comes back down towards that final stint where Campbell will be able to have the shorter pit stop at that point. But I really like this from Chin, because now for the first time Campbell really will be under pressure as you see Valiokas, our leader, down pit lane this time by.
Adam Blocker goes 1 lap longer. He does go on to lap 26. We'll see if Mike Razmas will follow, but it's been a good stint to open this race up for Razmas, barring the one mistake that we saw from him. So really now, got to wonder where Badefer, with his massive undercut, is going to end up cycling out. Valiokas, of course, will have the shortest roll time after being released off the jacks, but still waiting to put in a little bit more fuel. 26.8 seconds.
Oh, and Krause goes out right in front of him.
That's not ideal. Neither is the fact that John Badefer is already going to be off and away with a slightly shorter fill like Joshua Chin. But more importantly, Austin Young also in front of Valiokas, who now has 2 Hydra Race Geodesic racing cars in front of him with 52 minutes to run.
And one more Hydra Race Geodesic racing driver right behind in Graham Saunders. I think no drama here with Kraus and Saunders is what Saunders is hoping for. No repeat of what we saw earlier, and Kraus does get well out of the way here and let these leaders go. He's just circulating around here, 4 laps down for points at this point. But yeah, that's a bit of a change, and I think that's a product of just how long that Valiokas goes there. But at the same time, he's now going to be on the fresher tires, and he's going to have to fuel less come the end of this race. So I think that while Betafor and Young are in the catbird seat right now, the real driver of this race is still going to be Marius Valiokas.
Tend to agree with you. Adam Blocker into pit lane now. 26 laps for him, Razmas and Taylor, although Taylor is 7th, even though 4 cars in front of him have already pitted, so he is, after what happened down at the hairpin, a little bit compromised relative to the rest of his class. So gaps at the line as Betafor will lead at the end of lap 27 is going to be 1.2 or so back to Austin Young, another 1.7 back to Marius Valiokas in the first non-geodesic racing machine. Graham Saunders 1.3 seconds further back, and as Adam Blocker exits pit lane, it is going to be in 5th position. Still 4.5 seconds off the back of the top 4 though, so really hasn't gained any time since he got past Taylor. What was it? 15, 20 laps ago?
No, but more importantly, Arjun, is he hasn't lost any time, and having gone as long as he has, if you look at it relative to Valiokas, who was the leader, he's really gained about 2 seconds overall. It's just that's going to have to take some time to cycle through and pay off for him.
Would you want to be leading this race if you're Austin Young, or would you be content to sit back and ride behind your teammate John Betafor as you work through traffic?
I kind of would be content to just sit back and let Betafor clear the tides a little bit for me here, because it can get dicey being the one making the moves. We've seen Valiokas a number of times making some very brave moves to try and put a gap in between. When you're the one who's following, it's much easier to just sort of respond and reel yourself back in rather than being the one have to make the aggressive moves.
Oh, I definitely heard a bonk.
Yes.
Now, I'm not sure who that was. Matt Taylor has gone to lap 27, by the way. I don't think Alexander Van der Sant and Caleb Bensi will necessarily appreciate the fact that he's now going on to lap 28. So Matt Taylor, I guess, would actually have pitted after what happened to his car at the hairpin. My timing got restarted when everything behind the scenes went a little bit wonky, so apologies for me slightly missing that. Don't remember off the top of my head if we are going to have to see Taylor make an additional pit stop. I don't think that he is, though, so this is very much a position on merit. So just keep an eye on this one as through the traffic. Here comes Van der Sant, here comes Bensi.
Yeah, and this is a real good battle. Oh my, that's a big incident.
I am going to sound like I'm biased here, but as much as Matt Taylor wants to use the lap traffic as a pick, what does Fernando Alonso say? All the time you must leave the room.
Yeah, and somehow I will say that they did manage to stay off of the wall between the two of them, although that has cost Van der Sant a lot of time there. And yeah, I might be biased as well, but you have to leave at least a little bit of room. And with the circuit curving the way it does, that was a lot of squeezing there from Matt Taylor.
Yep, and we may see something similar here, although Chase Wilson at the very last moment jinks over to the very left, tries to switch back Miguel Vigo in a battle for 4th position in GT3. Again, let's give a shout out to Chase Wilson, who's flashing the lights, frustrated with the pro driver in front of him. Give him some credit here.
And he's not done here. He's trying to make this move happen. He's not given up on that number 66 of Miguel Vigo. And meanwhile, he's got some leaders coming into the picture, some GTPs coming into lap. So it's going to get a little bit more dicey here as they try to make their way around.
Just minding their business, though. That's all that they can really do. Let's go and cycle through a few of those moments, including one that we missed with Tyler Graf, who... This is something that I've been talking about just this past weekend. There are some times that the slower class is actually better into the braking zone than the faster class. Can be the case in this GT3 versus LMDH battle. The Tyler Graf got a little bit wonky earlier, and then the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing car absolutely cleans him out.
Yeah, that's a tough one, and this was the contact with Taylor and Van de Sant, and again, I don't think seeing that replay has really changed anything for me. Van de Sant does a great job crossing him over, and he's well established, and you can see Taylor, he was basically halfway over, and then he really comes and squeezes Van de Sant, trying to trap Van de Sant behind there, but you can't squeeze that hard at that point in the straightaway.
We'll grab one more look at it and slow it down. And this is again, we always talk about using the pick at the end of the day. You've got to be careful when you do that, especially given how wide that back straightaway is. Should Van de Sant have lifted? Absolutely. Is Van de Sant a racing driver? Yes. Is he therefore going to lift? No. There's the logic. And it all, unfortunately, we can all appreciate both sides in that perspective. The question will be what race control has to think about it, which is why I'm glad I'm not in race control.
And I'm sure if you're Van de Sant, his argument would be, well, by that point my nose was already in front of him, so why should I be the one who has to lift?
I'm trying to see if there is a penalty that's already been awarded, but I can't actually read that in session. So Andrew, you may have to let me know what race control has determined.
So the only penalty so far is Carlos Villa, I believe, was the driver who ran through Tyler Graf there.
Okay.
And that is a completely understandable avoidable contact penalty.
They don't come much easier than that one. I usually say that I don't want to be in race control shoes. I think we could have done that one with our eyes closed.
Yes.
Carlos Villa comes into pit lane to serve that penalty now. 45 minutes to go. We're already halfway through this one. And now we've got 3 cars at the front. 2 Hydra Race Geodesic Racing machines, and then the race clutch car of Marius Valiokis. Graham Saunders trying to latch on. Adam Blocker actually closing in overall since he came out of pit lane through the traffic. Still a long way to go, and it's anyone's game. Blocker's got the advantage of having gone longest of them all, but at the same time, Valiokis is not in a bad position, all things considered. It's really John Baderford that you've got to worry the most for. Pitted the earliest, stopped for the shortest, has the longest left to pit.
Yeah, and that's why I think Baderford is so keen to lead right now, is he's able to sort of dictate the pace, and he's also able to use the clean air to his advantage, because while the draft effect isn't necessarily the biggest in these cars anymore, it does still affect you as you're going around. So the likes of Young and Valiokis, they are getting a little bit of understeer, a little bit of extra tire wear just simply from following this close to John Baderford through all of these technical sections.
So halfway through round 3 of your Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. It's been a fascinating run so far. 1 pit stop cycle done, still 1 left to go. 3 cars at the front in your LMDH. Sean Campbell starting to break away in the GT3s. It's looking very, very interesting. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on RaceSpotTV with the run to the checkered flag in the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Hockenheimring presented by HyperX. Hello everyone and welcome back to RaceSpotTV and what's going to be an interesting 41 odd minutes in round 3 of the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of the Hockenheimring presented by HyperX. Arjuna Kenkipati on hand with Andrew Kinsella for what's been a fascinating race so far, and in the 180 odd seconds that we were away, boy did it start to look even more intriguing. Marius Valiokas, with an early contender for move of the season, has slipped past Austin Young to climb his way up into second. Graham Saunders has joined the fun. Adam Blocker's close to joining the party as well. Andrew, 5 cars in contention to win here in LMDH.
What a race this is turning out to be, isn't it, Arjuna? You got a little bit of everything. You got a little bit of differing tire strategy, and you got some really fast drivers fighting it out here. And I believe we might have a replay just to show just what a special move Valiokas had there.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that in the moment. We'll check in as well very quickly, though, with GT3, which by no means is done and dusted, because Josh Chin, with the short fill, has been able to keep Sean Campbell very, very honest, and we know just how good Josh Chin can be when it comes to saving fuel. 5 seconds given up in a short fill in the first stint. He's going to have a lot of work to do in this middle phase of the race, but at the very least, he's making life a little bit more interesting for Sean Campbell after 2 rather snoozeful races to kick things off.
Absolutely. Chin's doing a fantastic job here. I think he's really starting to get the feel of this GT3 car. And as you say, he's really holding Sean Campbell's feet to the fire at this point. I don't know that it'll be this close after the second round of pit stops where Campbell is able to maybe take a little bit of a shorter stop, but I do think that this is going to be something that's going to be fairly close all the way to the end. But right now, Arjuna, all the action is up front with the leading 4.
Yeah, no, they are definitely, just look at them. 0.8 of a second splits them. That is remarkable. And now Marius Valiokas might even have a crack for the lead as they work towards the next bits of traffic. Andrew mentioned a replay of the move. Let's check it out through that Mercedes-Benz arena as Austin Young tried to go the long way around, hung out to dry by his teammate, and the foresight from Valiokas to have got the move done before it was really ever on goes to show the level of racecraft that he brings to the series.
Absolutely. That was all about planning. Valiokas knew exactly what he was doing there. He saw the teammates fighting. He saw Young putting Beta 4 under pressure, and he anticipated the move and the crossover. It was perfectly executed. Now look at Valiokas down here into the hairpin, trying around the outside of Beta 4.
He tried to jink back to the inside. Beta 4 was having none of it. Blockers within 2 seconds of the back of Saunders as well. Look, he's weaving back and forth. That doesn't make sense. Surely he wants to take the shortest distance possible. Valiokas to the outside, though, on the Hydro Race Geodesic Racing car of John Badefer. The fact that they're fighting so aggressively now does have me a little bit confused, because surely it would be wiser to maybe just settle in and save some fuel and try and do something, especially knowing that Valiokas is already going to dive down to pit lane later than the rest of these drivers.
Well, I just think that they don't really need to save fuel at this point, Arjuna. We know that the GTPs can go basically 35, 37 minutes on a fuel tank. Beta 4 came in just before the hour mark, 1 hour to go. So he's going to be well and truly good to go on fuel. So for him, it's all about the tires and tire management. And I think from Beta 4's point of view, he needs to be in the lead of the race, because if he isn't, he's going to be very quickly in 5th position.
I think that's a fair way of looking at it. I get the sense that this time into the hairpin, Valiokas is going to try and be a little bit more committed to the inside than he was able to be last time by, although a quarter of a second off, he's not close enough to have a full send into the hairpin. And in fact, Badefer going to look to the inside of a GT3, going to, let's be fair, bully Travis Jägerlaner out of the way, but all's fair in love and war, I guess?
All's fair in love and passing GT3s.
Oh!
As Valiokas on the inside, what a move that was!
He forced the issue. He wasn't taking no for an answer. Valiokas returns to the lead, but surely he's just going to kick off the Hornet's Nest even more. Here comes Adam Blocker as well.
That was incredible racing for Valiokas. I think he surprised John Beta 4 immensely there. Beta 4 was even covering off the inside a little bit, but Valiokas went in deeper and stronger, and he got that inside line. Nice driving from the pair of them.
He caught us off guard as well. And there...
Bedifer's in. Or Young is in. Sorry, Young is in.
I was going to say, given how much they're fighting, surely you could try something different. With 36 minutes or so to go, Austin Young bails from the leading group and says, I've had enough. Let me head down towards the pit lane. Let's take a look at that replay, though, as Valiokas gets past one of the GT3 cars. He caught himself by surprise. He didn't realize there was an opportunity. When he saw it, he grabbed it with both arms.
Yeah, just tremendous car control from the pair of them. The GT3 car did nothing wrong here, but he just presented that little bit of an opportunity. It caused Bedifer to really be preoccupied, coming into the braking zone, making sure that he gets clear of him before he starts braking, and it just presented that opportunity to Valiokas, and it takes real talent to be able to seize an opportunity like that.
Austin Young in front of a GT3 car on the merge back onto off of pit road, but we'll see how it fares out for him now. He's got Mike Razmas 2 seconds in front of him, which is going to technically be for position, albeit, of course, on very different strategies. Chase Wilson, by the way, passed by Miguel Vigo, passed by Matthew Morhart, but still runs in the very lead of that GT3 AM class. And so up in 6th position, going to rack up some decent points once again. Stretched out at the front. Traffic sometimes does do this, and inevitably it will compress once again. But this time I think it's Graham Saunders that's elected to bail off towards the pit road, and indeed off the 100 goes to try and fall into line with Austin Young.
Yeah, so this is very interesting actually, because was it not Bedifer who went the longest last time, or was it?
He went shortest. It was Austin Young that went the longest.
And he's still out there, so that's really interesting strategy from these geodesic racing team drivers. I'm not sure I fully understand. I understand where Austin Young was coming from. I'm not sure I understand where Sanders is coming from here, because if I were him, I would have tried to go longer than your teammate there. But at the same time, look at this gaggle of cars that Bedifer and Blocker are having to pick their way through. This is costing them immense amount of times. I think Valiokas just on this lap alone is going to be about a 1.5 seconds better than both of them.
Saunders in front of Austin Young by about 0.7 of a second. Crucially, though, in line behind Razmas, so they're going to have to work past him without losing too much time. Valiokas once again is open, 2 full seconds over Bedifer and Adam Blocker. You could go into pit road from any time moving from this point, clearly. The question will be who wants to bail off and attempt something. In the GT3 class, we expect them to go about 20-odd laps. They're about 12 laps into their run. I don't think they all did maximum fuel, especially in the case of Josh Chin. Expect to see him in probably just a handful of laps or so. Here's where the complication's going to be for Saunders and Young, getting past Razmas in that 68.
Yeah, so if they can get around Razmas here, I think that they're on a decent strategy, but it's a big if at this point, because it is technically for position. Saunders and Rasmus, Rasmus does not have to let Saunders and Young by any stretch of the imagination. He is well within his rights to fight these two, and the more that he fights, the worse that this strategy is, because Saunders and Young, they were basically counting on being able to run faster laps than Valiokas in relatively clean air, and that's just not happening for them right now.
Ooh, Saunders going to go defensive. Young's going to try and get past his teammate. Bit early to be fighting, surely, and contact between them as they funnel out of turn 2 and onto that back straightaway. What's rule number 1 of racing? Don't hit your teammate. I'm pretty sure they've already broken that here.
Yeah, if they didn't, they came awfully close, Arjuna. And the thing about that fighting is that it's done nothing for them in terms of their actual battle here, which is trying to get around Rasmus as quickly as possible. It does look like Rasmus has seen just how crazy they are behind him, has decided that he wants no part of it. So maybe overall that aggression was a good strategy, but not in the way they intended.
I don't necessarily blame him, if I could be totally honest. Here's a look at the replay, by the way. I want to see if there was contact. Look how much more confident Young was under the brakes initially, though. You tell me there's not contact.
Yeah, if there wasn't, it was within millimeters. So either way, the contact, if there was any, was light enough that I'm sure that there was no harm, no foul for either of them there. But you never know with internet racing and racing that close, especially to your teammate, because disasters can happen spontaneously.
Yes.
So it's a risky proposition what they're doing. Let me put it that way.
It's not something that I traditionally would ever want to get involved in. There's sometimes an interesting discussion that comes when we talk about the likes of Josh Rogers, who of course moved from Australia to Germany to be a little bit more reasonable when it comes to his latency in some of the competitions he's a part of. And so some say that he could be more aggressive when he was in Australia because he knew that other people had to be more fearful of him, which I think is a really interesting way of thinking about it, Andrew.
Yeah, it is. It can be used as a little bit of a weapon sometimes, and there have been times where I will admit that even though I knew that I had a connection issue, at a certain point you just have to keep driving and you have to keep being yourself out there. You can't let the connection affect you, and it's sort of up to the other drivers out there to make sure that they're negotiating the connection issues safely as well. As we see Betafor coming down pit lane, so this will be really telling Arjuna, because he was in a lot of traffic there with Adam Blocker and Marius Valiokis. So will Betafor come out in front of his teammates or behind his teammates here?
13 seconds and counting. It was 22 seconds stationary for Sanders and Young, almost equivalent stops. And so waiting for that final second to bleed off for Betafor. In fact, he has to stop for 24 seconds. He's going to end up a long way behind when all things are said and done. He's going to be well behind Razmas, let alone close to Sanders or Young.
Yeah, so that was a substantial time loss there for Betafor, and I think that's just a testament of how tough the traffic has been the last few laps for the leaders of the race. Because even you look at Valiokis and Blocker's now fallen a full 3 seconds back as we have a GT3 car. That's the number 19 car. That's the number 19 car of Chris Reagan. So that's one of your AM Championship hopefuls having not so good of a race here today. He's had a tough race all around, and he's down in 15th and directly on the pit lane here. He's well within the window to make that final stop.
Joshua Chin also comes in this lap, by the way. We knew he was going to be in one of the soonest, and so no surprise. Here's a look at a couple more incidents. That curb not just catching out LMDH's and Phil Kraus. Craig Forsyth snaps hard into the wall by himself. Not the only car that's had a major issue, by the way. Tyler Graf, now, he's gone all the way to the inside. Has he forgot to pit, and has he run out of fuel?
No, I think that Tyler Graf has a really difficult car to drive after that issue that he had earlier on, and I think he just decided to get out of the leader's way and sort of park there. Worth mentioning, as we were watching that replay, Rasmus and one of the Geodesic Racing GT3 cars had a little bit of an incident getting on the pit lane there, Arjuna.
It was Carlos Villa that... I don't think the first issue that he's had today, unfortunately, has already had a drive-through penalty, and we'll pick up what happened to him as well. Of course, his teammates in the LMDH class having a good run. Vigo still in contention for third, and this is where I did say it can be hard to make your intentions known, and GT3 cars always do want to have a bit of understeer, and so you're always going to run a little bit wider, and you can just see Villa was already trying to keep it tight. It wasn't like he wasn't committed to the pit lane entry. The LMDH, though, just wanted to get past, and poor Carlos Villa spooked off into the tire wall.
Yeah, and once you hit that grass there, Arjuna, especially with the new grass textures that they introduced a couple of updates ago, it's really, really slick out there, and it's hard to get your car turning. It'll continue going on in a direction, but it's really hard to make the car turn, so... unfortunate there for Villa. I don't blame either of them, because I don't think Rasmus was intending to dive like that, but at the same time I don't think he was expecting Villa to go as far out as he did, and then it just happened there. And Villa's in another incident.
Yeah, speaking of Carlos Villa, timing screen indicates that the hairpin he's been picked up in something else, and it's taken with him, I think, Marius Valiokis, your race leader.
It was the race leader.
And so the gap's been brought down to a second or so. Not ideal for Valiokis, who's been brought
does
back.
Valiokis have any damage here, Arjuna?
He's been brought back not for the first time today. This time I'm going to suspect it's not just him. We'll see if it was his fault, though, through the traffic. Into the hairpin. Talk us through it, Andrew.
So there's an LMDH car in front, and Via lets that LMDH car, and look, Valiokis is there, in my opinion. He's established himself on the inside. I think Via just wasn't paying enough attention. And then, of course, the GT3 cars do brake a little bit better than the LMDHs, but that's an early turn-in from Via when you have an LMDH coming through there. I think he just didn't realize that Valiokis was as far alongside as he was going to be there, and that's costly for your leader.
And they've got David Siwa still in front of them a lap later as they get to the back straightaway. Blocker within 7/10. They are going to have to work through. Ryan Otis and Miguel Vigo are going back and forth, and they're costing each other some time here. I think Morehart might be brought into contention, and Chase Wilson, who's already made his final pit stop, could try and take advantage of this. Once again, we talked about how important the communication on pit entry was going to be. Ryan Otis follows, Miguel Vigo follows Ryan Otis into pit lane. Unfortunately, that did not end a lot worse, because it could have.
And that was another issue of miscommunication between a Geodesic Racing prototype and a Geodesic Racing GT3 car.
So I guess rule number one of racing is you can hit your teammate as long as they're in a different class?
Apparently.
Okay, yeah, I'm just making sure. These are the rules of engagement as prescribed by the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing team. Now, Miguel Vigo, has he pulled a blinder, or has Ryan Otis missed a beat? 16.7 seconds for Miguel Vigo in the final pit stop of the race. Where's Ryan Otis? Nowhere to be seen, and that's because he was stationary for 22 full seconds. He's even behind Chris Staples in the 43 now.
Yeah, so that has to be something to do with tire strategy. I'm wondering if Vigo took tires on his first stop and then didn't take tires on his second stop, and Otis maybe did the opposite strategy?
It could be, because we have kind of had the inclination that in two pit stop races, car can take on fuel and change tires at the same time. Drivers have said that one of those pit stops likely to be a tire stop.
Yeah, so I think that's what's happened here, because Vigo was looking stronger than Ryan Otis in that first stint, and then he fell back, and I wasn't quite sure why, and I think we stumbled upon the real reason there. Is it's just all come around full circle in the tire strategy. Meanwhile, the leaders are picking their way through the GT3s, and Blocker is getting a little bit caught out there by passing some of these drivers. Valiokis, with his usual aggression here, he is taking no prisoners with these GT3 cars. Oh my goodness, what a move.
You say aggression, that was measured aggression though, because that was an opportunity that any top class driver is going to take. And again, I'll just reiterate, there is a slight gulf in expectations for traffic between Valiokis with his, okay, he's only 5,000, only 5,500 I rating. Let's take Adam Blocker's 7,500 I rating as an example. I'm not going to pick on any of the GT3 AM drivers, but we've got some lower I ratings in the mix as well. I rating doesn't tell everything, but it's just a general indication.
Yeah, there's a number of different things that go into I rating. Of course, how many official races you do. I for instance, have basically abandoned my official career at this point, and I almost solely run leagues. So my I rating of 33,000 or 3,300 or some odd is not necessarily indicative of what my actual skill would be. It's actually far lower than that.
Blocker, by the way, has taken tires. I saw him go up on the jacks, 23.6 seconds stationary. He's come out in front of John Badefer, but behind Young and Saunders. He's going to have to fight with Badefer, who's already got those tires up to temperature and pressure immediately down the inside into turns 2. And now they're going to have to work their way up to the hairpin. And Blocker, hopefully with plenty of battery, can try and deploy it to get back in front of a Hydra Race Geodesic Racing potential 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, Badefer knows how important this move is. He knows that Adam Blocker's got the nice fresh tires, the lower fuel load, and that's going to mean all the world here in this final stint. As Adam Blocker tries the over-under move there, he just isn't quite able to get alongside, but there's a GT3 car. Is this going to affect the thing? Oh, Badefer's going to have the advantage. It's so difficult as the GT3 driver in that scenario. Look at the move from...
And Badefer never saw Blocker coming, and it was square contact there. I'll be curious what Race Control has to say. Might not matter because Blocker says, I'm going to slot back into line. Personally, I'm of the opinion that if there is something that happens and the positions redress, they didn't really lose too much time. Just let it be. Race Control will have their own viewpoint on that one. Andrew, will grab a look at the replay. What were you thinking when you saw it?
I was holding my breath there because Blocker looked like he was out of it by that GT3 car and then just sends it up the inside. Very similar to what Valiokas did, but Blocker went just that little bit deeper, and that's why they made that square contact that you saw there, and it did cost them probably about half a second, maybe even 3/4 of a second there. But it was an optimistic move there from Blocker, but I don't think that this battle is done by any stretch of the imagination. Wait, has Blocker's made a mistake there somewhere?
I think he may also have gone on a slowdown, potentially. 3
or
seconds.
I wonder if he got some damage here, Arjuna.
Car looks okay. Remember, he would have made contact with the right side of his car. The only thing that looks wrong there, let's be honest, is my face on the side of it. Race Control has already said racing deal, which I've got no problem with. Going back in time to the Matt Taylor incident with Alexander Van der Sant, we did note that it was Matt Taylor that got an avoidable contact penalty even. And so that is also part of the reason why he is down in 12th position right now. Speaking of which, guess who he's right behind?
Could it possibly be Alexander Van der Sant?
Oh, look at that. How did you know?
Somehow, sometimes the racing gods just like to play a little game, and it's called put the drivers who have already been in conflict back in touch with each other, and it's always entertaining from the commentator's perspective.
And you want to see damage on the right side of a car, just wait till we get another shot of the right side of Van der Sant's car, because that is definitely a BMW which needs some replacement body panels. Unfortunately, right now, with plenty of right-hand corners, we've got cameras on the outside of the track. Eventually, it will switch back. Here we go. There we go. You can just about see it now.
Yeah, there's a little bit of damage there. It's definitely affecting Van der Sant's speed. He was doing really well earlier on in this race, battling in for that 7th and 8th position with Matt Taylor. And so this damage has definitely affected his race, which is a shame because this was probably his strongest race so far in this category. Of course, we've seen Van der Sant in the IndyCar series do very well before, but yeah, it just hasn't gone his way so far in these prototypes yet.
Round 1, he was able to claw his way back up into contention, but into contention maybe is being generous. Here's Valiokas still out on track onto lap 49 in the race, 23 in the stint. So we should see him down into pit lane, if not this, not next time by, this time by rather. The next time by, maybe the time after that. Everyone's been pretty equal in 22-ish second pit stops, apart from the fact that both Mike Rasmussen and Aaron Morgan in some of our graphics LC machines have had 12-second and 15-second pit stops respectively, which would indicate to me, Andrew, no tires.
Yeah, that's absolutely a no tire stop, which is to me is a bold call here, because I just don't think that these prototype tires are lasting even really through a full stint, judging by the time fall off by the ends of some of these stints. So, I mean, it's a call. If you're back in 7th and 8th, what do you really have to lose? But at the same time, not one that I would personally make.
It's one of those ones which I think you're gambling a little bit on the pace holding up. We'll see how it does fare out. Slightly stagnated behind, by the way, with those that have already pitted in this LMDH grouping. 4-ish seconds between Sanders and Young, then another 3 between Young and Badefer. Blocker slowly closing back up to the rear end of John Badefer, but taking a little bit of time at the end of the day. Here's your race leader in, and once again, we haven't had much to talk about when it comes to Sean Campbell in his WMP Racing number 26 BMW M4 GT3. It's always good when you're a race leader that you don't have much to talk about, though. He doesn't go up on the jacks. This should be another short stop.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens between Campbell and Chin here. Just how close will Chin be able to be? I think it's probably going to end up being about in the 5-second area, maybe even as much as 8 seconds, depending on how well Chin gets through these last few corners here. So definitely not what Chin was hoping for, but at the same time, he's done a good job keeping Campbell at least a little bit honest throughout the course of this race. It hasn't been another 30-second romp for Campbell.
No, and I think for Chin as well, just getting more used to the car, maybe the way these setups are built, and so maybe we will see the private label team hype car getting stronger and stronger. I was going to say that maybe we can convince Tommy Milner to jump into the series, but I get the sense he's not going to be allowed to drive this car.
Could be a slight conflict of interest.
Maybe we can put him in a BMW M Hybrid V8, although I was interviewing Tommy, who was racing in the GSI Endurance Series, not this past weekend, the weekend before, in the prototype with the likes of Phil Kraus and Josh Chin. And he said it was weird for him to be in the prototype because he has been the victim of many ascend by a GT, as Joshua Chin is the victim of ascend there by John Badefer. And so he did not feel like he could, in good conscience, do the same to any GT3 cars. That's an interesting perspective.
It is an interesting perspective, and it's amazing how the morality of multi-class racing sort of evolves over time, and as you've experienced different aspects of it. Valiokis in the pit lane here. He's coming back on track, and he's going to be well in front of Graham Saunders there. So that looked like, did he?
No tires, 12.4 seconds.
No tires there, so that's an interesting call there. So
the thing
there's only
here,
15 minutes remaining, so he's only got about a half stint remaining. So I'll give him that. He didn't really have, like, he came in one of the latest stints, so he probably went as long as he could. It's doable. So I do think he's going to be off pace here, though.
These are tires that in the real world are meant to do double stints. Now, that's not full speed double stints. And it's only 15 minutes. What's the track conditions like? Still toasty, but not a touch of cloud cover to speak of. So that's maybe where the concern will be. 5.5 seconds with 14.5 minutes to go. Let's track the gap and we'll see how it all fares out. Let's go check in, though, with Adam Blocker as he tries to hunt down Badefer. Gap now under a second. Opportunity maybe coming with some traffic in front, and they got a decent chunk of traffic still to contend with. Meanwhile, as Adam Blocker has some good success, his Powerslide Motorsports teammate Alexander Van der Sat is unfortunately back down in pit lane.
I was going to say there was a little bit of smoke coming out of that corner there. While we were on board with Blocker, and I was wondering if that had a little bit to do with Van der Sat there, but yep, that's exactly what it was. He just hooked a hard right after getting up on the perforations, and it's not really a sausage curb per se, but it's like a half sausage curb, and it just threw him right into the outside wall there.
Yep, no, not much you can do, unfortunately, once you hit the curb there. And for a flat track, you tend to have plenty of anti-cut devices to disincentivize drivers from trying to take opportunities like Van der Sat tried there. So not unsurprising, all things considered. 39 took to the green flag. Creighton Carter and Logan Spath got tangled up through the first cycle of traffic. Creighton Carter is headed back out onto track and is trying to recover at least a couple of points. Eric Staropoli retired a handful of laps after that. Craig Forsyth, Tyler Graf have also all been mixed up in incidents as well. And so Alexander Van der Sat might become now the 5th retiree here today. All things considered, though, knock on wood, because I do believe in the commentator's curse, it's been all right in terms of traffic management. Have I just cursed something? I think I have.
We've had a big spin in the final corner there. That was Chris Fowler and a couple of GT3 cars. That was the 43. Who was that?
It's Chris Fowler and Christopher Hill in the number
Chris
20
Hill.
and the 101, and we'll take a look at that in a few moments' time. But Chris Fowler was the first car one lap down, and Chris Hill, unfortunately, has not really been involved in too much. But there you go, commentator's curse. It is real.
Absolutely. That was almost instantaneous, and I think Chris Staples got in that as well. It looked like Fowler just coming up on these GT3 cars, and the two GT3 cars just came together, synchronized spinning there. Fowler nowhere to go, and then Staples just barely makes his way through there.
just about, although having said that, those cars all getting away scot-free. You know who hasn't gotten away scot-free? It's Chris Reagan. Let's check it out. It's that curve once again, and it's almost a mirror image of what we saw with Craig Forsyth a handful of laps ago. That's Reagan's day done and dusted.
And it's so disheartening to make it through 80 minutes of racing only to have your race end like that, so I definitely feel for Reagan there. Meanwhile, Blocker is really starting to put the pressure on John Betafort. The traffic was not kind to the 67 Hydro Race Geodesic racing car. Blocker trying to follow him through here, so he's going to keep the pressure on Betafort, and the fresher tires of Adam Blocker, I think, are really starting to come into play.
This is where the lack of practice for Blocker may start to show, though. In the closing stages, 80 minutes already done, and now having to push hard in those final 10. See how much he's going to be able to push. Dives to the inside. Tries to dive to the inside of Chris Hill after being involved in an incident a lap ago. Blocker, I don't think too thrilled with that one. That's why he's weaving back and forth now. You can't flash your headlights once you get in front of a car, so the only way you can do anything is by weaving. Blocker now has lost a further 0.7 of a second as a result.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of what Hill did there, especially if you're in a battle with the two GTP cars. When you're letting one by, you let both of them by. There was no sense in really cutting Blocker off there, but sometimes you just don't realize that the second car is there as well. But it's cost Blocker almost a second here to Betafort that Blocker's going to have to reel back in, and he's quickly running out of time.
Less than 10 minutes to go. Not even sure how many laps it is. We've talked a lot about Chase Wilson, and as he looks set for a third victory in a row, rather, how he is looking good in that AM class. Chris Staples, though, has also looked really good. He's once again up there in the top 10. He's going to have a task on his hands to stay there, though, because Villa and Hill right on the bumper now. And again, remember, as Staples gets uncomfortably loose over the sausage curb that claimed Alexander Van der Sant and allows Villa to slip on past into 9th spot, he is fighting with pro cars, yes, but he is fighting for point in his championship as well.
And the tough thing for Staples here is these are two cars that are sort of on a recovery drive. Obviously, we just saw the incident with Christopher Hill that cost him a good 10 seconds and a few positions here. And we all know that Villa has been through the wars here today with a number of incidents. So Staples is losing positions rapidly at this point, and that's definitely to his detriment in his chase of Chase Wilson.
We're in turn one. Haven't really had to talk too much about incident limits today, which is a pretty good thing. It's nice when we don't have to worry too much about that. This is really the main action on track at this point in time. Betafort and Blocker have closed up once again, yes, but Saunders has shrunk the gap down by 2 or 3 seconds to within 3.5 of Valiokas, but with 8.5 minutes to go, the worn rubber not holding up Valiokas maybe as much as I initially thought it might. 28.6 last time for him, 28.1 for Saunders. Now you may say that's half a second, yes. That could also have been half a second of traffic.
Well, I was going to say, I think where Valiokas is really suffering is in traffic. I think that he's okay when he's on his own, but as soon as he gets behind someone, the overall or the relative lack of grip really starts to present itself, where Saunders can really get back on the throttle quickly. Valiokas has to be a little bit more tentative, and it's just costing him a little bit of time at different points here. But overall, I don't think that Saunders is going to have to turn up the wick here. I don't think he has enough time at this current pace to catch Valiokas at this point.
Fight for first and second, fight for fourth and fifth as well, and now Blocker within 2-3 car lengths as they head off out of turn 2. Sweep through the left at 3 and then building that speed up on towards the back straightaway in the braking zone for the hairpin. In the draft, Blocker starting to close. They've got some clean air in front as well. Maybe a bit too far behind to have a full send, but for Blocker, after what was a... I don't want to say...
Was there a little bit of contact there on the exit?
Minor contact, maybe. After what was, I don't want to say lackluster qualifying performance, but we'll give Blocker his racing driver excuses. It's been a good race pace relative to the qualifying speed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where that lack of practice time has come into play for Blocker. He didn't have the one lap in qualifying where he could just go 10 tenths. But in this race, you're able to sort of settle into a rhythm, maybe find the extra tenth or two that you've been lacking just through the repetition and through finding the different ways through traffic. And then suddenly you find yourself with the speed that you didn't have in qualifying.
Gap for the lead, under 3 seconds as we come to the line once again. End of lap 56 for the likes of Bedifer and Blocker. Half a tenth between these two, and now Bedifer going to get checked up potentially into one. Can Blocker set this up? Not able to get on power as aggressively to be alongside into the braking zone for 2, but Bedifer pressured enough to go defensive and tight. This is all about now racecraft, setting moves up corners in advance. And Blocker is also surely thinking about battery management. They're slightly restricted in how much they're able to play around with that one. He was a little bit further away last time by, but I don't think he's close enough to have a send. And even though he'll half jink to the inside, it was half-hearted at best.
Yeah, but all that he's doing right now is he's setting Bedifer up. So when he finally does make that move, Bedifer won't necessarily think that he's coming, but We've seen Blocker be last of the late breakers already once here today. I don't think that he's going to pull any punches when it comes to doing it a second time, but we're about to get into some more traffic here. They're quickly coming up on a lapped Chris Fowler here, so that's going to be another thing to consider. Is it's one thing to be lapping GT3 traffic where they have a significant straight line advantage, but when you're lapping a prototype, you really do count on some cooperation here, so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
They're going to get any cooperation, we're about to find out. Got to wonder as well for these drivers, how much more grip do they have relative to Valiokas? Because Valiokas' lap time still holding up relatively strong. He's lost a lot of time heading out, I think, of turn 2 and 3 with Joshua Chin, and the gap now down to 2.5 seconds. Matt Taylor into pit lane after being off kilter with the rest of the field. That's going to drop him down to 13th spot, but after being involved in some of the drama early, 13th still better than some of the rest of the Graphics LC teammates. Here's Blocker into the hairpin once again. Lap by lap, he gets closer and closer.
Yeah, he's right on the back of John Bedifer through there. One of these times, I think Blocker is just going to have that send. He's quickly running out of opportunities. They did manage to get around Fowler on that long back straightaway there. Fowler did pull to the side there, so that was the cooperation that Bedifer was looking for. Blocker was hoping probably that Fowler held him up a little bit more, but look at how close Blocker is through these technical sections. He's really able to keep the pressure on Bedifer, but I just don't think he has quite enough at this point to make that move happen.
Got to wonder as well, running out of time, is he going to have to force the issue? We've already seen him try to do that once. Now, you said that your race leader's losing the most time through traffic. It helps that Graham Saunders is being that aggressive as he dices his way on the outside of the final corner past the GT3 machine. That's a car trying to get out of the way as well. James Paulson, I think, getting out of dodge, but race lead now down to 1.5 seconds. And if Graham Saunders gets there, and it's not if but when surely now, what will Valiokas have to be able to defend?
And the answer to that question, Arjun, is I think almost nothing, because you saw just how squirrely Valiokas was getting off onto the power. But Blocker and Bedifer, Blocker's going for the move on Bedifer right now.
Here we go, we take a look in with them in towards the hairpin. Blocker's got traffic to deal with in the form of the 71. And so as Creighton Carter gets out of the way, Blocker doesn't get that opportunity this time.
So unfortunate for Blocker. He set that up perfectly. The only thing that he didn't count on was the traffic. But is he going to have another move here through the Mercedes arena?
We've seen him try to jink to the inside at the last minute, but this seems like more just getting into the mind of Bedifer, putting more and more doubt into the number 67. Lap by lap, getting closer and closer, but will be 2 laps to go at the line, and that's not just for Blocker in his quest to get past John Bedifer. It's for Graham Saunders to try and work past Marius Valiokas. Now within a car length, maybe 2 at the line. You can see how much the race clutch machine is struggling. Saunders will look to try and fight to get his season back on track.
Valiokis' tires are done. They're just done. The rear tires are falling off a cliff right now. You'll be able to see it so plainly coming off of this corner in this shot. Valiokis is just so hesitant on the throttle, and Saunders just is able to get right back onto the throttle. Normally there would be 3 or 4 car lengths here, but Saunders is just right there on Valiokis, and it's really going to be difficult for Valiokis to defend for this lap. Saunders looking to the inside here into the hairpin. Look at the late braking maneuver. What a move from Saunders. There's the pass for the win potentially.
It was a great job there, but you could just see how much he was struggling. Valiokis to slow the car down. Meanwhile, battle for 4th and 5th position. Beta for now the one under fire as he chops the nose off of Blocker, working through the lap traffic. Will be 1 lap to go. Can already see how much Valiokis has dropped back off Saunders, almost 1 full second into that stadium section. Hydra Race, Geodesic Racing looking good to make it 3 for 3, but can it be with a double podium? Austin Young still having to fight for his life.
Yeah, what a sequence of events here, and look at Beta for pushing all the way he can. Blocker on the inside and through the stadium. What a move from Adam Blocker.
We said he was going to wait to get forceful, but still side by side. Young's not having any of this. White flag in hand, 1 more lap to go, and now Young runs out wide. Blocker back up underneath him. There was some contact. Blocker has to catch his car. Betafer will hold on to 4th for the time being. Blocker has been really getting the elbows out today. It was inevitable there was going to be some level of contact. Betafer comes out on top.
Yeah, and now now Blocker only has a lap to reel Betafer back in, and I don't think he's going to be able to do it. So it all came down to that move. Blocker chucked it up the inside through the stadium section, but Betafer hung on expertly on the outside and then somehow was able to convert that in. They both survived that contact in the final corner. Blocker's trying to close back up, but I think he's just going to be a little bit too far away here.
Gotta wonder if maybe he put it all on the table 1 lap too early. Could have left it 1 lap later. One thing we haven't really talked about today, though, is the worries about fuel. Miguel Vigo, I'm not sure if that's fuel related, but from 3rd position has just headed back towards the pit lane. This is a track which has been known in its day, especially when it was 12 odd kilometers, for sucking fuel and for drivers running out early. Fortunately, no such worries for Graham Saunders. A difficult start to kick off the Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. Graham Saunders roars back to HyperX victory lane. He wins your next level racing Grand Prix of the Hockenheimring presented by HyperX. Just 1.4 seconds in front of Marius Valiokis, who is unable to go back-to-back in terms of victories in the Lionheart Racing Series. Austin Young, John Betafer, and then Adam Blocker, the rest of your top 5 in what was a monumental tussle for your LMDHs. Sean Campbell's going to work his way towards the line in what is a worryingly closing gap back to Joshua Chin. Come the line, it's going to be 1 second, maybe that between Campbell and Chin. Yes, it's 3 in a row for the number 26 WMP Racing Machine. But while Sean Campbell continues to impress us, Joshua Chin made him work hard for this one here today.
Wow, so many storylines throughout that race, and don't forget Chase Wilson as well with the excellent 5th place and the win in the AM category for the GT3s as well. But I think the story of the day, Arjuna, Graham Saunders being able to somehow find a way to catch the slowing car of Valiokis in the final couple of laps there, make the move happen. Worth noting that Adam Blocker did fall about 5 seconds behind Betafer on that final lap. There was a little bit of contact between himself and the GT3 car Chris Staples, where Staples were trying to negotiate the Mercedes arena, and that caused Blocker to go 5 seconds back as well.
Chase Wilson will come across the line. Top 5 combined GT3, top AM on the day. No other AM gets up into the top 10. Chase Wilson drove the best that we've seen so far from him this season, and it's a worrying sign to the rest of the AM class that he can duke it out wheel to wheel with the likes of Miguel Vigo and so many more. We mentioned Miguel Vigo having to head back to pit lane on the closing laps of the race. Just listen in here, Andrew, as he crawled to the white flag.
That's an awful lot of silence coming from that car there, Arjuna. Just just heartbreaking where you miscalculated by that small a margin.
And so we're going to talk about it a lot more, I have no doubt about that, over the course of this season, but unfortunately Miguel Vigo showing us that even the best can unfortunately make small mistakes in terms of the judgment. Here's a look at your butt kicker race results. Graham Saunders grabs his first victory in the series, 1.4 seconds clear of Valiokas, whose gamble with tires not paying off the way that he would have wanted. Austin Young unable to convert for a third consecutive victory, at least on the third step of the podium. John Badefer holds off Adam Blocker, who drops some more seconds in the closing laps. Caleb Bensi, Mike Rasmas, Aaron Morgan, the final car scored on your lead lap. Then Chris Fowler 1 lap down with Alex Guy on the rest of your top 10. David Searle, Matt Taylor, Brian Beard, and then Phil Kraus, those that finished the race, Alexander Van der Sant, Michael O'Brien, and Tyler Graf, those that unfortunately struggled to make it through the drama. Over in GT3, worrying margin at the line. We'll get the word from Sean Campbell how close he was on fuel. Only 1.2 seconds between him and Josh Chin, who really impressed and held Sean Campbell honest over the course of the 90 minutes. Ryan Otis scored third in what is an impressive streak that the number 95 Synergy Motorsports car is slowly building. Matthew Morhart fourth, and then the first AM, Chase Wilson, only 45 seconds off of Sean Campbell. Brian Bennett sixth on a slightly off-cycle pit stop sequence, which kept him as the last car on the lead lap, before Miguel Vigo, whose call to take the tow after the white flag actually got him 7th place. Andrew Marquez, Carlos Villa, and then Christopher Hill complete your top 10. 11th goes to Chris Staples, second in AM, and James Paulson behind him in third. Travis Yeager-Lehner, and then Trevor Malone, Mark Cohn, Clint Martin, Gabe Wood, Christopher Reagan, Craig Forsyth, and Creighton Carter make up your rest of your top 20. Before we find Eric Staropoli, Logan Spath, and then Jim Herrick, the non-finishers here today. With that, as we get ready to head over to HyperX Victory Lane, let's head on over to our Butt Kicker post-race show for all your post-race coverage. And standing by in Victory Lane is the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing driver of Graham Sanders. Graham, what was that race like for you? LMDH kept us entertained for 90 minutes, all sorts of different strategies going on. You on tires at the end with Mario struggling with no grip. What was going through your mind in those closing laps? Graham, unfortunately, does not actually have a copy with us just yet. So instead, let's see if we can dial up Sean Campbell instead. Sean, do you have a copy with us?
Yeah.
There we go. Sean, 1.23 seconds at the line. What happened there?
Well, I just checked. My rear left tire was at 13%. And I have no one to blame but it's because I didn't take the left side tires. I'm pretty sure the strategy. That's why the gap at the pit lane coming out of the pits was so big. I'm pretty sure Josh took tires. I'd have to ask him about it.
I can confirm that.
He probably took left sides.
So it wasn't fuel, it was tires. Does that now mean moving forward that you've got something new to think about?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it. I was actually in a call with somebody, and they were watching the stream, and I got them to look and see if they could see Josh in the pit lane, if he was taking tires or not, because he pitted too early, but they couldn't see it, so it's fine. But now I know, right?
So now you know.
Yeah, now I know. If it looks like you might, then probably do.
That's great. 3 in a row now. How are you feeling in this car, Sean? I talk about it all the time. You jump across cars, you bounce around them. What's it like when you jump back into this BMW M4?
I don't know. It's a weird experience. This car thrives on smoothness, I feel, because it's so hard to get the power down. So if you can be smooth the whole stint, you'll be really quick. Which I started trying to be smooth right at the end, and I gained time on a couple laps just because I guess I had the rear tire cooled down enough, you know?
Well, congratulations on a 3rd win in a row. We'll see you in a week's time at Watkins Glen to see if you'll make it 4 in a row.
Hopefully.
Sean Campbell, victorious in the GT3s. We'll head on over to Josh Chin as well, who really closed the gap in the final couple of laps. Did you know, Josh, that his, I think it was left rear tire was down to 13% at the end?
I had figured he took 2 tires in the last pit stop, but I didn't realize that he would have gone the direction he did, so it almost worked out. I know there was a few times I kind of got held up in the traffic. That was probably the difference between that after the tire stops and everything, but overall, second sucks, but it's still a pretty good day. I didn't think I really had any pace this week, and Only had maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep going in today, so it's a pretty good result, all things considered.
I was going to say that if you didn't feel like you had much pace, then surely this is a good sign, because you were up there, you were keeping him honest. We head over to Watkins Glen, and we talked about this at the start of the show. Start of the season as endurance racing staples, and now we're going to start heading off into some more of the, I don't want to say unknowns, but less trodden circuits. Circuit of the Americas, our trip over to Mosport. What are you thinking about some of those tracks, especially given that you're in a GT3 car at the mercy of the prototypes?
It's definitely going to be interesting as we get to some of those tighter tracks. COTA is going to be a lot of visibility problems for people that aren't used to it, so we'll see how that goes. I know a lot of people are kind of still learning the wings of doing endurance racing for the first time, or multi-class. Some of us have been doing it for a while. Some people, this is their first time, and they're trying to get used to it, and it's a steep learning curve if you haven't done it before. There's so many nuanced things that you never really pick up on until you get in the race session, and the practice races and qualifying and everything else. It doesn't really compare to actually being in the race session and seeing the levels of aggression that people are going to have. So it'll be interesting. Mosport is definitely going to be, I think, the one to watch for a lot of action.
Got a couple of weeks before that. Congratulations on second, Josh. We'll see you in a week over in upstate New York.
Yep, thank you guys.
Josh Chin, always great to talk to him and get his perspective. Think we finally have a copy with Graham Sanders. Graham?
I'm here.
We got you loud and clear. What was going through your mind then as you were hunting down Marius, knowing that you had more grip, knowing that laps were ticking away?
Well, to be honest, when I came out and I saw, when Marius came out and had a short stop, I knew exactly what he did, and those first few laps, the pace difference really wasn't there. We were neck and neck. I gained a little bit through traffic, and then those last 3 or 4 laps, I got so close to him, and it looked like on that second to last lap, Marius just lost all grip. But I'm exhausted. I'm drenched right now. That was a phenomenal race.
You've shown speed in the first 2 rounds of the season. Just had no luck. You got some luck here today. How does that help pick you up moving forward?
Oh, it helps a lot. After round 2, I was pretty down. Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was 2 races was something that was completely out of my control, and I really needed to have a good race today. And I'm ecstatic right now. So happy.
Congratulations, Graham. Hopefully the first of many. We'll see you in a week's time to see if you'll make it 2 in a row.
Thank you, Arjun. I appreciate it.
Hydra Race Geodesic Racing looking good, but let's have a chat with Marius Valiogas, not just because he drove so well, but also because he didn't get his winning interview last Thursday, winning at Watkins Glen in the Lionheart Retro Series. First, Marius, congratulations. Second, commiserations. What are you feeling right now?
Oh man, excited, really. I mean, that was just an amazing race. I mean, it's, of course it sucks losing like that, but I mean, the battling all throughout the whole race, I mean, you couldn't be happier with that kind of racing. It's just good fun.
You've shown plenty of speed to start this season off, but I do have to slightly throw you under the bus. We're 3 rounds in. When are we going to get a race clutch paint on this car?
That is a good question. Talking with the sponsors, but we're working on it. It will get there. It is getting kind of sad to drive around without the livery on, but it will get there.
Okay, well, I'm going to hold you to that. Maybe not next round, but the round after that. Watkins Glen up again in a few days' time. How are you feeling about... Watkins Glen up in 7 days' time. How are you feeling about your chances, especially given that we're going so frenetic with competition here? The Retro Series racing on Thursday over at New Hampshire as well.
Yeah, a lot of racing, a lot of fun to be had. Sim Cup on Sunday as well, so very busy schedule. But yeah, no, what's it called? Watkins is definitely a favorite track of mine. I think I've shown that in Retro 2 years in a row now, so definitely excited about it. Think my chances are pretty good there, and we'll see what happens.
Well, hopefully, by the way, livery's there on Sunday for the BMW M Sim Cup. But wishing you the best for the racing week ahead, Marius, and we'll see you in a week's time to see you back here for the Butt Kicker Sports Car Series.
Thank you, guys.
Always good to chat with our drivers. And Andrew, as we head out of our post-race discussions, we look forward to what I think is my most anticipated race of the season. Watkins Glen is maybe not my favorite racetrack of all, but whenever you get 2 classes of competition, especially when you strip out that bus stop chicane, which is terrible with the new curbing, it somehow always puts on a show.
I was going to say the Lionheart series made the decision to take out that bus stop, and I think it's 100% the right choice. It's going to allow the GT3s to get out of the way on the back straightaway, and it's going to just make this track so flat, fast, and flowing, even more so than it already is. And it's a completely different animal to Hockenheim because of the nature of the track, because of the undulations, the off-camber corners. It's a driver's track, and it's going to be very interesting to see how 40 drivers in 2 different classes treat this race.
I'm very curious, but also worried. Let's not forget that now in consecutive years, the Lionheart Retro Series has seen cautions within the first 4 laps of the race over at Watkins Glen. Here's a look at our next level racing schedule as well, just to remind you. We talked about Mosport being a highlight. That's at the very end of July. But we're really traveling the world, Andrew. We're going to some of the best tracks in the world. Watkins Glen up next in May. Then June is Circuit of the Americas and the Circuit de la Sarthe. What's your personal highlight looking at this? I don't think we've talked about that just yet.
Well, of course, other than my home track at Mosport, I would think I'm also looking forward to Road America. I think that's going to be phenomenal in these cars. And then towards the end of the season, I'm really looking forward to Imola and seeing how these drivers negotiate that track as well.
Really love what an international flair we've got here, finishing under the night lights at the Daytona International Speedway as well, all building up to the Rolex 24. Oh, it's going to be a treat to crown our first 3 champions in this Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. As we wrap things up, though, it's time to thank those that make this all possible, starting with HyperX. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt Kicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. Visit thebuttkicker.com to learn more. If you think sim racing is thrilling, try getting behind the wheel of a real race car. The BMW M4 GT4 experience at the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California puts you in the cockpit of one of BMW's fastest cars, complete with roll cage and racing slicks. You'll get fitted with a racing suit, practice pit stops, and lap their track with pro instructors. Nothing virtual about their thrills. To book your BMW M4 GT4 experience, call or visit the links on screen. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit nextlevelracing.com. Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. Arena is an all-new esports streaming experience driven by real-time interactions between gamers and their communities. Arena brings live broadcast fan engagement to the next level. Get involved and make a difference on arena.tv. From simple logos to full branding for your company, Virtual Designs deliveries raced by Indy 500 champions. Graphics offers the finest quality with a wide range of design services. Visit graphicsesports.com. It's not just them, but so many more that make this all possible. To learn more about the partners of the Lionheart Racing Series, or the 3 competitions the sanctioning body puts forward, head over to lionheartracingseries.com. We're back in action this Thursday at New Hampshire for the Lionheart Retro Series, but a week from today, the Butt Kicker Sports Car Series rumbles upstate to Watkins Glen for round 4 in its 2023 Odyssey. On behalf of the team at RaceSpotTV, for Andrew Kinsella alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you in a week's time. Marius Valiokas and Graham Saunders put on a show here today. What will happen in upstate New York?